New evidence has emerged that Russia is indeed preparing for a confrontation with the entire North Atlantic Alliance, and now the publication reports that Putin is creating new forces to confront NATO. The Kremlin is expanding army recruitment, increasing weapons production, and modernizing infrastructure along Russia's northern borders. This suggests that Russia is building bases and expanding its military presence near the border with Finland, indicating where its growing army might be relocated after the ceasefire in Ukraine. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is May 24th. Let's discuss this topic together and consider whether the new signals and actions from Moscow really mean that Putin is indeed creating new forces and new threats to confront NATO in the future. Some experts are making predictions for 5 years from now, while others say that Russia could be ready to start a hybrid war against the countries of the North Atlantic Alliance in just a couple of years. And now they're already testing the waters, trying to see how NATO will react to certain military provocations. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like this episode, and leave your comments below so that the algorithms seeing your activity will recommend this episode to a larger audience. I will be grateful to you for that. Also subscribe to my Telegram channel. The link to it is in the description of this video. So it says that Russia is building bases and expanding its military presence near the border with Finland, making it clear where its growing army might be deployed. After the ceasefire in Ukraine, new satellite images have revealed columns of new tents for troop accommodation, expanding military bases and renovated Arctic airfields. And all this is happening opposite NATO's northeastern flank, which could be a harbinger of a future war. There are signals in other places as well. The Kremlin is expanding army recruitment, increasing weapons production, and modernizing the logistics infrastructure along Russia's borders with Norway, Finland, and the Baltic countries. Russia is now maximally reinforcing its entire border with NATO, building military bases and infrastructure, and deploying troops there. And now representatives of the Finnish Defense Ministry claim that the new buildup of forces is insignificant. But most likely, this is being done as part of preparations for the redeployment of tens of thousands of military personnel and military facilities to the border and further north to the Arctic. Although this is inevitable, in Finland it was reported that the threat is quite real. Officials believe they have up to 5 years before Moscow can build up its forces to alarming levels if the full-scale war in Ukraine ends. As Major General Sami Nurmi stated, he is the head of the strategic department of the Finnish Defense Forces. We joined NATO, so we anticipated this. The military is monitoring very closely and preparing accordingly. What we are seeing is preparation for the future, but troops will remain on our borders and their numbers will grow. We do not see a direct threat to Finland right now, but we need to prepare for threats. And further, the publication writes that Donald Trump said the same thing on Tuesday. Here. Responding to Russia's military maneuvers on NATO's borders, the United States President stated that he is not at all concerned and that Finland and Norway will be completely safe, saying that Putin will not go to war there. Finland, which was forced to cede territory to the Soviet Union during World War II, adhered to a policy of neutrality for decades until it decided to join NATO. In 2023, after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the country's accession to the alliance expanded NATO's border with Russia by 835 miles, changing the military strategic situation in Northern Europe. And now Major General Nurmi takes a sober but pragmatic approach to the new infrastructure and Russia's troop movement plans. He says, "We don't want to be too alarmist, but monitoring events on the other side of the border has been our daily work for hundreds of years." And now satellite images have shown that in Kamenka, less than 40 miles from Finland and 140 miles from Helsinki, more than 130 new tents for soldiers have been set up. The base, which hadn't been used until 2022, should now be able to accommodate up to 2,000 soldiers. Russia is also expanding its military infrastructure around the city of Petrozavodsk, which is located 100 miles from the borders of Finland and Norway. It could become the new headquarters for Moscow's northwestern forces in the event of a possible conflict with NATO. In addition, satellite images have also captured increased activity at Soviet-era Arctic air bases in Severomorsk 2 and Olenia, where Tu-22 and Tu-95 strategic bombers capable of carrying even nuclear weapons have been relocated. Russian helicopters have also been spotted in the Arctic city of Murmansk for the first time in 2 decades. Russia, as reported, was forced to move expensive military assets to the north in order to take them out of the range of Ukrainian drones, which are striking air bases across Russia. However, NATO fears that Moscow is expanding its military presence further and further north in order to strengthen its control over resources. In the Arctic region, which is at the center of the new geopolitical rivalry, as Major General Nurmi stated, the Arctic is an important theater of operations for the future. This will not change. We are working very closely with our Arctic allies to assess Russia's plans. However, changes are also occurring at the organizational level. In particular, the Russian armed forces are restructuring to counter what they call the growing threat from NATO in the northwest. Last year, Moscow restored the huge Leningrad military district to increase its military presence near Finland, Estonia, and Latvia. The smaller brigades that were stationed there before the war in Ukraine will almost double in size and become divisions with more than 10,000 personnel. This process has already occurred. In Kamenka, where rows of tents have been set up, the 38th Motorized Rifle Brigade has become the 69th Motorized Rifle Division. And as Emil Kostekhelmi, an analyst from a Finnish organization that monitors the movement of Russian troops, states, quote, "This is a continuation of military plans until 2022 and a response to new geopolitical events related to the accession of Sweden and Finland to NATO." According to him, it is difficult to interpret Russia's actions as strictly defensive or offensive, since there are many scenarios and uncertainties. Let me remind you that in February, Danish intelligence warned that Russia could start a major land war in Europe within 5 years if the war in Ukraine becomes frozen. Others suggest that Moscow will need only 2 years to be ready. There are also other signs that Russian military forces are not preparing for peace. And Putin ordered his military to increase the size of the army to 1.5 million soldiers compared to 1 million before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Well, military spending has already reached 6% of gross domestic product this year, while NATO countries on average spend 2.7%. That's the average figure. Tanks in Russia are being built faster, but they are not being sent to Ukraine. That is, Russia's defense industry has already been relaunched. It's on more powerful tracks. But all these tanks are not being sent to Ukraine. Russia's hybrid attacks, including jamming on Finland and other NATO countries, are intensifying. Along the border, cutting underwater cables and other sabotage attacks inside countries, which are seen as Moscow's attempt to destabilize the West and take revenge for supporting Ukraine. On Finland's eastern border, construction of the first 22 miles of the planned 124-mile fence was completed on Wednesday. This massive fence is reinforced with barbed wire, cameras and sensors. After Helsinki accused Moscow last year of sending migrants into Finland as part of a hybrid operation. What happens on the other side of the border is of the highest priority, said Jarmo Lindberg, a member of the Finnish parliament and head of the country's defense department. From 2014 to 2019. However, maintaining the balance typical of other Finnish officials regarding maneuvers, he still noted the latest movements and signs of construction. This is just another tactical or operational change in a long series of Russian actions. The former general agrees with the assessments that it will take up to 5 years to restore Russia's military potential in the north after it was depleted for the war in Ukraine. But the process, as he says, is underway. However, the billion-euro question will be what Russia will do next if, as he writes, a peace agreement is reached in Ukraine. The Finns will be watching where the troops are relocated across Russian territory, whether the same units will return to the Finnish borders or if new ones will be deployed. Will these just be troops, or will they bring air defense systems, radar systems, electronic warfare systems, and so on? Is Finland ready for what's coming? Well, as Finnish officials say, we know that Russia will always be a threat to us. We will be ready, we are already ready. But nevertheless, The main point of this episode is that there is indeed evidence appearing that Russia is actually trying to increase its military presence along the northern borders with the northern NATO countries. Draw your own conclusions. I will leave this story unfinished. And be sure to write your conclusions and your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and don't forget to leave a like.